Hey, pastors. Welcome to a new episode of my Pastors Thriving podcast. Today is about your discipleship strategy and what might be causing it to be a little bit stagnant or held back, stuck, any of those things. If you feel like your strategy is stuck, stale, or just straight up ineffective, then this episode is for you. I'm talking directly to lead pastors who are really kind of tired of launching the next Bible study, the next curriculum, the next thing that North Point Church puts out. No offense to North Point Church, but the next small group model, only to feel like nothing is really moving you forward. You're showing up, you're preaching your heart out, and yet the culture of discipleship just isn't quite catching fire. So today, I want to break down 3 key reasons that your strategy may not be as effective as you want it to be, and how importantly, and more importantly, how to actually correct those issues right now. So let's dive into this. Reason number 1, you're treating discipleship like a class instead of a culture. Have you ever seen this? Have you ever experienced it? The reality is that most churches go into a discipleship concept mentality like, okay, here's our next class, here's our next curriculum, here's our next study to go through. Even if it's just a Bible, we're going to talk through a book of the Bible or a concept of the Bible or something along those lines. The issue is this, is that most churches today rely on information transferring, sorry, rather than transformation, life transformation. That's where we need to be focused and drill down into, is in the moments of transformation. I want you to think about the concept of how Jesus did this, right? The way, the model, the method, the mode, or whatever that you want to call it, about how Jesus did this was, here's some information. Now I want you to go change people's lives with it. Like, I always kind of joke and get facetious around John 3:16. So John, the disciple John, who wrote the book of John, who called himself, Jesus' favorite disciple, or the one who Jesus loved the most, or whatever those things are. I think in the end of that, he even said, like, John ran faster than Peter to the tomb where Jesus was, and so he's a better runner and all these different kinds of things. He didn't have a problem with arrogance or pride or anything like that. Who knows? But my joke is this: is that Jesus gave him, the Holy Spirit gave John 3:16. Obviously one of the most famous scriptures, the most well-known passages in all the Bible. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, blah, blah, blah. Jesus gave John 3:16, and then he told him, okay, now go change the world with that one concept, and then come back to me when you're ready for step number 2. I firmly believe that one of the biggest drawbacks that we have in our discipleship cultures today is that we are not releasing people to go utilize what they have. We're not giving them opportunity. We're not giving them responsibility. We're not even giving them platform to be able to go and utilize what they have before we just kind of back a dump truck up to them and be like, all right, here's everything you need to know. I think, it's no surprise to you. People are overwhelmed on information. They're not overwhelmed on transformation. And then we have these excuses. Well, people are busy. Yeah, they're busy doing things that God doesn't really want them to do. Right. And I'm not saying that God doesn't want them to do stuff like whatever, but the goal is to go out into all the world and make disciples. We're making disciples. The church is making disciples, but how are we effectively equipping people to go out and make disciples themselves? Here's the thing, like, here's a quote that I want to give you. Discipleship isn't learned, it's lived. It's something that we experience along the way. It's something that we help to instill in people. And, I got this like astounding realization a couple months back. I was talking with an interview I did with Lori Wilhite way back, probably a year and a half ago. Lori Wilhite, one of the co-pastors, I guess, if you will, of Central Christian Church in Las Vegas. And she made this astounding statement to me that just really struck me. She said, in just the simplicity of it was, she said, for whatever reason, the church is still the bride of Christ, and it's still the vehicle he chooses to use to be able to effectively move the movement or the message of God forward. He's not choosing another vehicle. He's not choosing another method. He's not doing this. And yet, for whatever reason, we've transformed church from being like the incubator system where people can actually flesh this out and try it. We've turned it into a business model where only the elite can participate in it. Only the chosen or the selected or the staff, the hired ones, are the ones who get to be a part of this culture that is supposed to be the vehicle for life transformation. We equip people, or we teach them how to live a little bit of their lives, and then expect them, okay, now you go out into the world and you try this out there, right? And so what are we expecting people to do if we can't utilize the incubator system that is the church? If we can't utilize it there, if we can't equip people right there, if we can't give them platform right there, it's no wonder why they can't go out into the toughness of the world and accomplish this either. We've got to build a culture where people are asked to do something with what they know: serve, live, give, lead, share. We need to actually design movement into your system. One of my favorite stories about this is from a disciple of mine that I worked with along the way. And I'll kind of just keep him anonymous from this context, but his story is that he came to me as like he was transfer growth from the COVID season, right? He came to our church as a transfer from another church because he just needed something new and fresh. He was really green in his faith. Didn't quite think that the Lord would really save him to the extent that he was hearing that the Lord would. And so he very much was like, okay, that's for everyone else, but you don't really know my story. I remember one day he actually took me out for lunch, and we went out and had some good tacos, because that's what you do. You have good tacos. And he tells me the details of his life. And Pastor, what I want you to know is that when people share with you the nitty-gritty details of their lives, basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to reject them on their terms. They want to know, okay, listen, if you're going to walk away from me, if you're going to abandon me, you're going to do it right here and right now. And what they find instead is, because they don't quite know the love of the Lord on that level yet, and they don't know that the love is a gift of the Holy Spirit that is indwelt into our lives, and we're leading through that mentality of love and acceptance. And so they tell us these details, and what do they find? They find acceptance. They don't find a face reaction or a gut level, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Oh, you're the exception to the rule of grace, the grace of God. They don't find that. They find acceptance. And this guy went on in our story after he found acceptance. I invited him, or he came to me and he said, hey, can you teach me how to preach? I want to preach a message. And so I did. I actually had a class going on at that moment about training people how to use their one message that God was instilling in their heart to be able to go out and do something with this. And so I trained him in it, and I taught him it. And then came the big hard truth. I had to give him platform and opportunity to preach this thing that God was instilling in his heart. That's the thing that really, really is the big indicator for us. We can teach people discipleship, but then we need to give them a platform with they can flesh it out. And so there it was, the middle of July on whatever summer that was. And there he is standing on my stage in front of my audience, rolling up his sleeve to be able to show his tattoo of Psalm 46:10 that was going to be the content of his message. I was so proud of him, because here he is. He's got this thing tattooed on his arm, and he's like, I want to talk to you today about be still and know that I am God. And he went through, it was a 12-minute talk. That was the time frame that I gave them to speak into. But it became one semblance of a pattern with which I used to be able to go through transformation and really accentuate or accelerate the life transformation that was happening inside of these people's lives. The amazing thing about that story is that he went on from there to be recruited or asked by a different group of people to come and pastor them several times a month. And that would have never happened if we wouldn't have given him opportunity, platform with which to really go through some life-changing moments. It's one of my proudest discipleship stories that I have. We've got to treat discipleship like a culture, not a class. Classes are meant to disseminate information. Cultures are meant to facilitate transformation. And I want you to know that discipleship is more about action than information. If you only know one thing about the goodness of God, but you've mastered that and you can accelerate that, you are a very effective disciple. It's not about all the things that you know, it's about the one thing that you do, right? So let's transform this into a culture. How about this one? This is a really good one, and this deserves its own show, but or episode. Your funnel ends too early. What does that mean? Reason number 2 that discipleship is stuck and it's not working. Your funnel ends too early. And this might be a little confusing too. You're like, Kevin, I don't understand the funnel. And that's why I'm going to tell you we're going to have to go through this at a whole nother time. It's really one of the, it's an entire day's focus in my Make More Disciples challenge. It's literally what I walk people through because we don't understand the concept of people walking through a sales funnel. And you're like, what does sales have to do with discipleship? It has everything to do with discipleship because we're literally working in the context of people's minds and how they think and how they respond and how they relate to what you're trying to get them to do. But there's confusion. Most churches are great at the front door, right? Inviting, welcoming, even connecting people to a group or a team. But what comes next? We haven't spelled that one out. And even if we do spell it out, it becomes so broad and so muddy and so detailed that people are like, yeah, I have no idea what to choose here. The other day, last week, I went to get my eyes checked. I have terrible eyes. I've told you before that I think my uncorrected vision is like 2400. I am like legally blind without corrective vision. It's awful. It's god awful. And so I'm still praying. I'm like, God, touch my eyes, make them. I don't want to wear contacts anymore. I want to wear glasses. But at the same time, I also feel like God has miraculously healed my blindness because of the miracle of medicine. And so I can see today. Thank God for that. Put this little plastic piece in my eye, whatever that thing is, and now I can see, and it's great. But here's the thing. As a part of this eye exam, I had to choose some new glasses. I use glasses as a backup. I primarily use contacts, but I use glasses as a backup. And so I'm staring at this wall of glasses that say these are for men. And obviously they have all these different pricing categories. And so, we gravitate towards what's cheap. I tend to not gravitate towards what's cheap. I tend to gravitate towards the name brands like Ray-Ban or Oakley or Giorgio or Armani or whatever, Armani, whatever. But I get overwhelmed. I end up walking out of that store and choosing nothing because I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what looks good on me. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I don't like. I don't know any of it. And so I choose nothing. And honestly, what's happening in church is that we're creating these places, these venues of overwhelm for people because they don't know the next step they take. They just know that there's a next step, but I don't know what to do with it. There's so many options. I'm not sure what to do. And I remember in one of the contexts I was in that the language was wherever you are, just take your next step. And then they list 1,000 next steps that people can take in front of them. And naturally, people want to know, okay, what's the best next step for me? What's the easiest next step for me? What's the cheapest next step for me? What's the one with the least effort for me? What's going to give me a quick win? And we can't tell them that. So the easiest thing for us to do is create one next step. What's the one next step that everyone needs to do? And I know you can be like, but Kevin, how do I narrow that down? Oh my goodness, now you're stuck in that same vortex, aren't you, Pastor? Because you're like, I have so many things that I want them to do, so many things that would be good for them to do. And then we resort to like this. Well, what if baptism is their next step? Well, what if it is? I'll be honest with you. What if salvation is their next step? I firmly believe that as we go through like the narrative of the gospel story and we watch Jesus as he interacts with his disciples along the way, one of the theories or the logics that we have in the discipleship culture of church is believing that salvation, the moment of salvation, is the catalyst moment for the rest of discipleship. And I think you're vehemently wrong. I think it's like you got to correct this mindset. Evangelism isn't the first step of discipleship. It's a step along the journey. I'm not sure that some of the disciples ever actually came to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ until Jesus was on the cross. Maybe even after that. It wasn't the fact that Jesus called them, out of the boat in Matthew chapter 4 or Luke chapter whatever, or John chapter 1. It wasn't that moment that Matthew or, I think in that first chapter, it's Andrew and Simon or Peter, and then James and John. That wasn't a moment of salvation. That was just like, okay, so we've heard about this Jesus. He's doing some cool tricks. Let's go follow him for a while and see what we can learn. That was just them taking a walk with him. That wasn't salvation. You got to get it out of your head, Pastor, that salvation comes first. No. Start discipling these people before they're ready. Start discipling these people without them even knowing it. Just take them on a journey. Hey, I want you to do this. And this is part of this program and this plan and this process. Everyone that comes into your church can do something when it comes to discipleship. This is enough. I'll come back to this. We'll talk about this a little bit more later on. But reason number 3, you don't have a champion. Vision dies without leadership, right? Most churches are missing an integral component to this pathway and this process. I figured this out. This was like one of the secret sauces of the thing that I created in the church context where I was in. And also is a huge component of the Make More Disciples Challenge that I lead. But it's called the Serve Team Coordinator. I'm just going to give you that one right now. I'm not going to spell it out. If you really want to know the details of it, you're going to have to join the Make More Disciples Challenge and let me walk you through it specifically. But it's the point person. It's literally the connector to everything, the coordinator to everything, and about the director of where everyone goes from this point. This is the point where strangulation happens or bottlenecking, right? People get stuck in this process of like, I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to go next. And I'll tell you a little bit of a concept of this. One of the churches that we had attended recently, we reached out to them and said, hey, my wife reached out and said, hey, my daughter would like to serve at a specific capacity. And like, children's, childcare or something, the nursery, whatever. And there was tons of confusion. There was no direct point of contact. There was no crystal clear direction. There was no follow through. In fact, my daughter it's been years, they still haven't served because it just fell through the cracks. And I'm not sure if it mattered to them or didn't matter to them. It mattered to us. It mattered specifically to my daughter because then she feels kind of rejected and not wanted. We've got to be able to figure this out. And okay, so I know instantly there's going to be some pushback and be like, Kevin, there's a lot of language here that you're talking about when it comes to like, serving in the church and discipleship. And those two things are not synonymous. And honestly, Pastor, I'm going to push back on you and be like, they're exactly synonymous. This is exactly the problem with our church's culture today. We're disseminating, or we're creating a difference between serving and discipleship. And they need to be synonymous. They need to be one and the same thing all the way up through your staff level. All right, so what do we do about all this? Well, I want to give you some fast fixes today. I mean, the fastest fix is for you to join my Make More Disciples Challenge and allow me to kind of coach you through this process and all that. And I'll give you a link in the show notes about how to sign up for that, how to get to be a part of it. It's not free, it's paid, but it would be well worth the investment of your time and your sanity to be able to figure out, okay, where are we bottlenecking? But here's some quick things that you can do, without having to go through a course or a class or anything or a challenge or anything like that. First, audit your current funnel. And you might be like, Kevin, I don't even understand the concept of a funnel. Cool. Let me teach you. But you can do a quick analysis of this. Where do you find that people kind of stall out? Where do they hang up? Do they hang up when you tell them the idea of next step? Do they hang up when you talk to them about the idea of volunteering or serving or giving? Or where do they get stuck? Let's identify that. And then number 2, like identify a spot where people could be activated a little bit faster. Have you ever done this? Have you ever just had conversations with people in your church? I know you're like, Kevin, that's ridiculous. Don't be silly. But I'm serious. When was the last time you went up to a random person in your congregation and said, hey, would you be interested in having coffee this week? I'd love to just get to know you, your story, and what might be next for your walk with the Lord. How about that? Crazy. How about that? And then I want to take that even a step further and say, when was the last time you did that with one of your staff members? Because here's the thing. One of the things I talk about in my webinar that I do to kind of walk people into, it's kind of a boot camp of like Make More Disciples Challenge. I talk about the two least discipled groups of people in your church. And this is going to kind of shock you, and I'll probably do a whole episode on this one too, but the number one least discipled group of people in your church is your staff, if you have a staff. If you don't have a staff, it would be your core volunteers. They are the least discipled group of people in your church. You know the second group of least discipled people in your church? The church people themselves. Why? Because we feel that if they don't respond to the announcements that we make or the emails that we send or the Facebook posts that we post, if they don't respond to that, then they must not need anything. And nothing could be further from the truth. And this is why I want to help you activate a funnel process that gets everyone integrated into the journey together. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, number three is this: assign a coordinator to own the movement. And that may feel a little bit ambiguous to you. That's no problem. I'll walk you through that one too. And then I want you to do this. I want you to keep it very simple. Keep it very simple. Don't create 6 programs. I actually want to encourage you to refine what you already have. Let's clean up the process. Let's make it very simple. Because what can happen is that if you simplify your process, you actually exponentially increase your accomplishment. Pastor, the mission has not changed, but the methods must. We get a little desperate when things don't quite go as the way that we want them to go. If we would kind of resort to simplifying the process, you would find a better outcome, right? If you want real discipleship movement, you need more than just curriculum. You need culture, you need clarity, and you need leaders. Listen, if this episode is kind of hitting you right where you're at right now, I want to encourage you to take some action. Share this episode with your team. Document, go through it. I'm going to give you actually a cheat sheet, right? 3 reasons why your strategy isn't working and how to fix it quite fast. And then if you're up for something more specific and more intentional, it's time for you to consider the Make More Disciples Challenge, or take me up on one of my free strategy calls that I offer with every conversation. You don't need a bigger budget. You need a better system, and I want to help you build it together. So, all right, guys, enough for today. I love you all. Proud of you. We'll talk soon.